How absorbed into a part do you get? I mean, you seem to use little theatrical tricks in this. It is very much your own brooding personality and voice with little technical means of getting something over. How much, do you feel in a part?
Well, I didn't think that I was capable of, I don't know quite what the word is, but when you get close to a part, in my case, it's sort of osmosis, the transference of something from one thing to the other, that I actually begin to feel curiously like the character that I'm playing, even if it's in a film. And I'm not by any means a method actor. I don't deliberately think myself into these kind of things. But there is an odd thing that does happen, I think, when you're totally absorbed in a part. Yes. I'm a fairly grey fellow, latterly, very grey, and live within myself as to because I'm playing a part who is grey and lives within himself, is not heroic, anti-heroic. I wouldn't accept a fight from anybody at the moment, though maybe a year ago I would have.
You made your name playing Hamlet, Henry V, Iago, Coriolanus, roles like these, and never Troilus, Florizel, Romeo. How alien?
I hate those parts.
It's completely alien, is it? Sort of the open expression of emotion.
I think Romeo is probably the worst part ever written by anybody that's so famous, I mean. There are worse parts. I once played Ferdinand in The Tempest. I tell you a story about when you start to get the bad notes, it's interesting to collect them. My favorite bad notes in the world is for Ferdinand in The Tempest. It was a kind of stand-in, a kind of understudy for Romeo and all those abject Shakespearean heroes who quite clearly are ladies. And I was playing this part, Ferdinand in The Tempest, and I loathed it with a passionate intensity, and I begged them to let me out of it. I said, I'll be one of the dancers, I'll be a nymph, anything. I said, but don't let me play this dreadful, diabolical Ferdinand. However, they forced me to play it, and I'm not short, but then I'm not tall either. I'm exactly 5 feet 10.5 inches in height, and I tend to width. They put me in a costume that had bunches of grapes over here, so that I looked like some strange Welsh Stone Age troglodyte. And I pretended that I wasn't on the stage. And I had a little toy sword in my hand, and those terrible things they give you in Shakespearean clothes, they make your legs look about 2 inches high. And I was perfectly convinced that nobody knew I was on the stage. And indeed, the critics were suitably kind. They all said I contributed effectively to the atmosphere or something like that, except for an old friend of mine called Ken Tynan, who said, this is the first time in our experience that we've ever seen Ferdinand played by a bull.
You moved on from the English theatre to Hollywood when you were, well, as many people have said, on the threshold of greatness in the English theatre. Did you leave for financial reasons, or has the cinema always held a stronger fascination for you than the live theatre?
No, not particularly, no. I went to Hollywood and I made a couple of films, both of which were very successful. One was called My Cousin Rachel and the other was called The Robe. And then I, if you call about the threshold, I was on the threshold then of earning, I suppose, a great deal of money. And I was very sensible, I thought, and went back to the Old Vic and played for a year at the Old Vic and therefore got into debt. I played Hamlet and Coriolanus and the Bastard in King John and Caliban and I've forgotten what all. And then I went back to Hollywood again, did another film, then went back to the Old Vic for another year. And I spread it out fairly evenly between the two worlds. Greatness is a word I don't understand.
I asked the question because you seem to have spent a long time in cinema trying to come to grips with the camera, and critical success has eluded you until recently in Beckett and Night of the Iguana.
Yeah, well, the reason for that is over there. That's my wife. You know, she knows a great deal about film acting, and she persuaded me that I mustn't pretend that film acting is just a means of filling in time between stage performances. Yeah. And indeed made me work at it, which I'd never done. I think, fundamentally, profoundly believed that film acting was only an excuse for acting until as you very kindly pointed out latterly, the last 3 or 4
Do
years.
you feel you're now beginning to feel at home?
Yeah, well, I
in a film
wouldn't go so
studio?
far as to think that I'm good or anything like that in the film half of the business, but certainly I try much harder than I did.
Do you film more because basically you're Byronic and the location work and the travelling and the unreal atmosphere makes just as big a contribution to your own personal happiness as does the actual creating of a role?
Yeah, that's a dicey question. Byronic is such an extraordinary word to apply.
Well,
I don't like traveling very
roaming
much.
around the world. You don't?
Yeah, no, I like being in places. I hate getting there. I hate planes. I don't mind trains, and I don't mind boats. But nowadays one has to fly everywhere, so I hate getting from one place to the other. Also, we have an enormous family, and traveling from one place to the other with 4 children is not easy. No, that has nothing to do, I don't think, with the film business, my desire to travel or my lack of desire. It's just that one has to.
If I could change tack, how important is the literature of theatre to you?
Immensely important, much more important than anything else, I think.
What do you read and who and...
I don't read plays very much. I don't like plays to read, except, of course, Shakespeare. My chief world, I suppose, as a reader is almost entirely poetic, or the opposite, detective stories. I'm a voracious reader, omnivorous, I will read anything. But the thing that draws me back all the time is poetry. I'm not really interested in Brecht or any of the non-poetic writers. People who are quite clearly instinctively poetic, like John Osborne or Harold Pinter, who, despite the fact that they write in prose, are unquestionably poets, are fascinating. Or like the man that I'm going to play next, that I never played, Edward Albee. Though he writes in prose, there's no question about this man's stupendous eloquence and poetry. But to play some of those chaps who write sort of Lonsdale comedies or anything like that never interested me at all.
If you wrote a play, would it be in verse or?
If I wrote a play, it would be a monologue, and I would play the central part.
Do you have any plans to return soon to the live theatre in England? I know you've done Hamlet recently on Broadway, but this was your first return to classical roles for a long time. Are we going to?
Yes, I think next year I go back to Oxford, to our university, and play Faustus, Mahler's Faustus, with Dr. Neville Coggill directing. And the rest of the company, apart from Helen of Troy, who shall be nameless, will be played by the boys at Oxford.
You must at some time, Richard Burton, have faced the question of whether you should have continued as an imposing, and even in the view of many people, great stage actor, or moved into the world of films, which is more commercially rewarding, but perhaps not so rewarding artistically. Do you ever regret having moved into the commercial cinema?
Oh, excuse me, Richard, that makes me so angry, because he has not left the stage. That's absolute bloody rubbish. Well, last year, he just got through doing a thing here for Oxford on the stage. The year before that, what was he doing on Broadway? That was the stage. How can you say he's left the stage?
Because that is not a continuous stage career in the sense that, for example, Paul Schofield or Laurence Olivier.
He's not continuous either on the stage. He does film appearances for money.
This is the
and so does Paul Schofield.
But Schofield has made one film in 10 or 14 years. And Richard was at one time, after Coriolanus particularly, hailed as being potentially the greatest stage actor that England ever produced. I wonder whether, in a way, your making of Faustus, which is the story of a man who sells out for a dream almost, is perhaps comparable with your decision then.
No, I don't think so, because one of the differences, I think, between myself and some other actors is the fact that they really have almost an anguish. For instance, Sir John Gielgud, who's almost my favorite actor in the world, and I think most of us. John really is helpless. He's upset unless he gets onto the stage and gets his teeth into a part, even though it's a part perhaps he doesn't want to play. He just has to be there. I don't have that sense of compulsion. Also, I need roughly about 6 weeks of active playing after the rehearsals, after you've opened, before the part matures as fully as I can make it. And then it begins to crack and flaw. I don't have, I have enormous energy, but I don't have that kind of moral stamina that Laurence Olivier has and Paul has and John has to go on and on, you know.
I wanted to ask Elizabeth Taylor if your irritation then was because you felt that the cinema was not the creative medium that the theatre was. I didn't know why you got so cross.
Because you said the exact phrase that I knew you were working up to, sold out, and it offends me to my soul. I'm going to sell out, I hope one day, to the stage. It's exactly the same thing. If I go on the stage, I'm selling out.
You mean you feel that the two arts are, in their own mediums, just as comparable? Quite. So you reckon that Richard Burton's cinema performance is as creative as anything that he could have done on the stage?
It's just as tasking, perhaps sometimes more tasking, because it's more difficult.
Well, I don't know about that.
Technically.
But
I mean,
also,
if you have
I think,
to start into
David,
a scene where you have a flow, and you stop for 2 hours, and then you start again, I promise you, your concentration has to be really finely whittled down.
But anyway, David, I think usually that sold-out business is written in England. Now,
a cheap journalist.
Now, I left England in 1957, so the last play I did was in England, was in 1957. Since that time, I've done 6 plays, 5 of which were enormous successes in New York. But since you've disappeared from the London scene, they sometimes tend to think that you're not still acting on the stage, you know. And I don't think it's I don't care whether they think I've sold out or not. I know whether I've sold out or not.
One thing you have said, Richard, about your life with Elizabeth Taylor is that it is a continuous excitement, but one can never really be sure what she's going to do next, as I found out just now. Would you say that the excitement will continue?
No, we enjoy each other's company very much, and people of very high temperament, as you know, as you may have noticed from Elizabeth.
Yes.
And we find it very difficult to be apart from each other for more than 2 or 3 hours. And in fact, our film careers are absolutely, film and stage, absolutely bound up with the fact that we must never, ever be separated.
You don't mind being known as the Laurel and Hardy?
I'm naming me that.
And I said, what's wrong with that? We should be so lucky.
Do you ever wish you weren't so beautiful? You were not born so beautiful?
Oh, God, I just wake up every morning saying, Jesus, if only I weren't so gorgeous. What do you mean?
Well, you are. You are. You are.
Yes, she said, what do you mean?
What I mean?
Wish she wasn't beautiful.
No, but sometimes a woman does. Sometimes a woman who is an actress says, God, if I weren't, then, you know, they'd take me more seriously, as Richard is saying. Is she occasionally or not?
Once heard of those mythical, apocryphal actresses who jump into a bath of milk every morning and splash themselves, I am beautiful, I am beautiful, I am beautiful. Elizabeth doesn't do that, a bath of gin. Do you
Richard, looking back on your career, it seems to be divided in two, almost exactly by Cleopatra. Would you agree with that it changed course completely after Cleopatra?
Well, I don't know. I think my life was changed by a woman, you know, who's called Elizabeth Taylor. I'm not entirely sure what exactly she did to me, but certainly I don't know exactly what to say, but those people, you know, like Laurence Olivier and Paul Schofield and Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor and people like that, they're very rare, very strange, very odd, very perverse, and they obviously believe that they are very extraordinary people in their odd way, and they believe firmly, of course, that they are gifted by God or something like that. Unfortunately, I don't believe that, you see. I mean, about myself. There is unquestionably a kind of passion, a strange idiocy, where you walk on the stage or you walk on the screen or whatever it is, and you feel a strange kind of power, I defy the power, of course.
What would you say it is that you do when you're up there in front of the camera?
No, I think I'm a sort of animal. I get on there and I don't out the words, and I have a reasonable voice and so on, and I just get out there and become an animal in some strange way, in the same way that the other people become animals, except that they believe that they are fundamentally powerful and beautiful and so on. I don't believe that at all. Certainly I'm not powerful, certainly I'm not beautiful, but I don't understand what these fellows do, except that I appreciate what they do, if you know what I mean.
But then what keeps you going in the same profession?
Money.
But you don't need the money now, surely.
You've got to be joking. I've got about 50,000 people to take care of. I have to pay everybody off. I have to pay lawyers, legends, keep this dog. You know. At the moment, I'm doing all right. I pick up a lot of money for films, and I don't know. I don't know, and it's absolute nonsense. The whole idea of the film business is nonsense. On the stage, of course, I'm absolutely sure, I'm certain I can go anywhere and play anything. But I don't really know what prompts the imagination of the public. Sure. It's a funny Chinese dog, the only Chinese dog who speaks Welsh. No, I really think it's very odd and very perverse. Laurence Olivier once said that were it not for the fact that he were an actor, he would have gone mad. And I'm beginning to think that I would have gone mad too. But I don't put myself in the same, of course, category as Laurence Olivier, because he really loves the theatre. He's obsessed by it and so on. I'm not.
On what basis now do you choose the roles you're going to play in movies? Because sometimes you seem to make very curious choices. Films like Bluebeard, for instance, and Hammersmith is Out. One wonders why you chose to do those films.
Yeah, I long to be a failure.
And?
And I am a failure.
Well, yeah, but a very successful failure.
No, I managed. I get along. I'm afraid that in about 5 or 6 months I'm going to go back on the stage. It terrifies me, it appalls me, but I'll go back on the stage.
Why? I mean, is it sheer masochism?
Perhaps. Never thought of that.
Richard, where do you go from here? I mean, how do you envisage your future? Are you going to go back to the stage? Or are you going to continue making movies? You once told me you were going to retire.
I think that the essential thing that I must do is quietly room myself into the grave, you know, sleep. Sleep is so fundamental. Did I ever tell you that poem about sleep? I bet I didn't.
No, I didn't think you did.
Oh, yeah.
But is it going to be back to the theatre or more movies?
No. The only thing that's important are the children and Elizabeth and being alive, I suppose, in a sort of extraordinary way. I don't know. I really don't know.
That sounds a very depressed attitude for you to be taking. I would have thought that in the position you're in now, you would be feeling much more bucked up about things.
You know, you must understand, Barry, that I'm sending you up.
I thought you might be.
Yeah. I think I'm reasonably intelligent, clever, good, kind. sweet, nasty.
Gifted?
Oh no, I'm not gifted. No, no.
But do you feel very vulnerable then when you're acting?
I hate acting.
Well, you did tell me a few years ago that you were planning to give it up. But you're still doing it. You made a lot of films since then.
I have to make the money, look. I have to make the money. You know, if you give your wife a jewel or something like that, costing him, shall we say, about $100,000 or whatever it is, what the hell are you going to do, you know? I just count the shekels, and I count the money.
Do you really do it just for the money, though, Richard?
Now, very.
I mean,
We're in a very, very, very strange state. Who knows what happens? I don't know. May I have a cigarette?
By all means, yes. Do you enjoy this superstar status, the tremendous celebrity, the fact that you can't move without being mobbed? Do you really enjoy it, that kind of life?
If it stops, I'm dead. Once, Elizabeth said, it'd be a very good idea if you took a year off, because you never stop. Because she's only done 30-something films, 35 films, and she's been a star since she was 8. And, but she takes time off. I never have. I've done the most utter rubbish in order to have somewhere to go in the morning. So she said, take a year off. So I said, okay, we had a lovely house in Mexico, sunny, everything. I lasted 5 weeks. I was off. I did a film, well, I won't bother to tell you about it.
Oh, come on. Let's hear it.
No, a man came to see me and he said, you know, we got a lot of wastage on the floor of a film called Tobruk. I said, oh, have you? He said it was, it made $6 million bucks. And I said, did it? I said, who's in it? He said, Rock Hudson and George Peppard. And he said, no, what I did was I picked up all these bits off the floor and I put them all together. And I got all the writers in, Universal Studios. Universal Studios is still run like the old studios was, with a big boss and all that. So I said to the 10 writers, you know, make out of this, make a script so that we can use the long shots and use Burton and the close-ups. And they did it. And they made a doable film. And I was so fascinated, I couldn't resist it. And we went off and we shot the film in, I don't know, 3 weeks and 2 days or something. And the film went out and was successful. It's called Raid on Rommel. And all the long shots, it's Rock Hudson. And all the close-ups, it's an Englishman called Green. And all the long shots, it's George Peppard. And all the close-ups, it's me. 1 year, I earned $8 million for one film. I got paid $1 million for the film, and the film was so successful that another $7 million came in. I remember getting a check just before Christmas, about 3 days before Christmas, for $1 million, which added to the rest. And it's not that I'm frightened of the money or anything like that. It's not my province. I give it away. Give it to my family, or I buy enormous presents for Elizabeth Taylor, or did, or for Susan, or for Sally, who was the next one up. I cannot hold on to it. I hold on to a little piece of property with a roof on the house, and that's all.
What's the worst film you've made?
I don't know. I made some lousy ones in my time. See, I always start off, usually, not that one, with very good intentions. You know, the script seems very good. The director has a tremendous reputation. The producer's a good producer, and you start off and you suddenly realize after 2 weeks you're in a piece of rubbish. And there's nothing you can do about it. Now in a play, oddly enough, I've done almost exactly the same number of plays as I've done of films. In a play, I've only had one real failure, which was in New York. I mean, we only ran for 2 weeks or something like that. And a good play, too, by Ennui. But I think it was misdirected and miscast, and I don't think I was very good, all that. But whether that is the fact that you yourself can change a play without benefit of director, as long as you've got a good lighting man and who can light the damn thing properly, and good actors around you, you can actually do things with an indifferent piece, which you can't do with the film. Well, you know, I've never thought much of myself as an actor. And I don't mean to be modest, but at the same time, I don't think there's been any particular successful thing that I've ever done, that one particular one that gave me any special pleasure. I think the fact that I was able to take care of a certain amount of people has given me some pleasure. The fact that I had the power to do it. But then there are some people, maybe 3 or 4 in the world, I mean outside my family, whom I love. You know, I trust them with my life, and I've had to sometimes. And all the things, all the troubles that they've gone through, you can imagine, as a result of the enormous publicity that I've had in my life. And never once have they ever worried me about it, or said, stop doing this, or stop doing that, or you're being a bad boy, or anything like that. They've been terribly good with me, always. They're a marvelous family. And apart from my family and 2 or 3 other people, very few people I would trust with anything.